And so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for what is the third presentation this morning for the Galileo Annual Conference. With us, we have Vee Rogacheva. She is a service design lead with OpenAthens. We also have Kristina Symes, Director of Product Development and Marketing at GIDEON. They will be talking to us today about something I know everyone wants to hear about, and that is tips and tricks on how to improve the library experience on a budget. So thank you so much, Vee and Kristina. I'll let you all take it away.
Hello, and thank you very much for that introduction. It's great to be here. It's great to be back with the Galileo community after a few years. We are very excited to share some of our favorite tools and techniques that can really help you transform your digital user experience. All the tools we will talk about today have been tried and tested. They are free or have a freemium version, and they can be used in all digital experiences, so websites, digital products, and services. So please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions during the presentation, and we will try to answer them all at the end. As mentioned before, my name is Kristina Symes. I work for GIDEON, Global Infectious Diseases and Epidemiology Online Network. Some of you might actually know me as the technical guy from OpenAthens, which is where I met my co-presenter some years ago. Vee Rogacheva is a service design lead for OpenAthens, which is an access management system for electronic resources, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And she was that person who opened my eyes and converted me to user-centric thinking. In practice, what does this mean? I stopped believing in a user error and started blaming systems. And that is so much more fun. So me and Vee are both very passionate about creating a great user experience. And we have worked to achieve that for over 30 digital products in both the front end and the technical back end. So enough about us. Let's talk about you and how you perceive a good user experience. If you could please grab your mobile phones if you have them nearby. If not, go rummage around and find them and hop on to slido.com. And in there, you will be asked to enter an event code, which is UXUX. Vee is going to demonstrate that on a slide just in a second. So we'll just give you a little bit of time to connect.
There it is. I hope you can see that. Once you get to slido.com, you will see the first question we have for you today, and that is, what comes to mind when you think of a good user experience? So we want to hear from you. What comes to mind when you think of a good user experience? Feel free to enter multiple responses. Just don't add too many words. It works in a little word cloud that we're looking to create and see what the perception is of user experience in the room. You can see some of the responses are already coming in. Simple is right in there in the middle, easy to use, convenient, easy to navigate, and that is so true for good user experience. Products, services, web experiences, even real products like actual physical products that are simple and easy to use, really are able to connect with users in such a powerful way and create a lasting memory of the experience we've had interacting with those products and services. And when I say sorry, Chris, go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I love the one that's floating around here, reading my mind. That is amazing. You know, if you go and have an experience with a product where you feel like it is reading your mind and it delivers exactly what you want, wow, you know, somebody had a real great experience here.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You know, there's a fine line between a really good experience and a bit spooky experience where it's so good, it kind of, like you say, it almost reads your mind. You're thinking, oh, that's a bit too much. Um, and of course, there's a great deal around ethics of design and how do we design ethical digital experiences in a way that privacy and integrity of the individual is preserved at all times, and that again needs to be presented in a simple, easy to access and easy to navigate way. So one thing that we were worried about when we had a chat with Chris planning for this presentation, we thought that people will say, "Oh, maybe this is something good user experience is something very expensive." Now, good news is that I don't see that as an answer here. So I really I'm very pleased to see that all of you think about benefits and value that can be delivered to users, and you know, costs and resources are perhaps a secondary consideration. And when the benefits are so obvious, so strong, then resources and budgets can be just justified. You can build the business case and get the resources that you need if you need them. Now, today, Chris and I are going to talk about how you can do that on a budget. So hopefully the budget that you will be requesting is not going to be that massive. So was there anything else you wanted to add, Chris, before I switch back to the presentation? Was there anything else that caught your eye in the responses?
Yes, I think as you switch, I would just like to add accessibility is one of the big three here. That is amazing to see just how many people don't take that into account when designing experiences, but it's such a key, and it can massively simplify the process as well. If you have accessibility in mind from the get-go, it sort of tells you, you know, how big your buttons need to be, what colors you should be using, and it just eliminates so much of the headache, and it works better for everyone. So I really love seeing that here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. And accessibility has been on the radar for a bit, particularly in Europe, with recent regulation that has been introduced by the European Union and adopted in the UK as well. There has been a lot of conversation around it. Of course, there was a update of the web accessibility standards as well. So yeah, accessibility is a hot topic, and now that a lot of people are working and studying remotely, it's even more important that we pay attention to accessibility and how users interact with digital services in a way that addresses their individual needs and requirements. Okay, so today Chris and I would like to share some of our favorite tools we use during design and development process. In my experience, librarians are naturally focused on delivering an excellent experience, but some have been struggling in the post-pandemic world where everything is online. We all have to adapt and adopt a number of new tools and methods to help us stay in touch with users and collaborate with colleagues. What has helped me to be able to deliver value to users is remain true to that user-centered design framework. And the framework itself, in its very basic form, has 3 steps. So first, you start by exploring the problem space and researching your user needs. You cannot solve a problem if you don't understand what the problem is. Any solution then will be just shooting in the dark. You need to really know the problem. You need to know the problem area very, very well. Second stop, once you understand that problem space, you experiment with ideas. You look for ways to learn what works, what doesn't work. You test and try new things that may or may not solve the problem. Finally, you implement a solution and you monitor the results, constantly looking for further opportunities to improve. Now I'm gonna hand over to Chris. In the next couple of slides, she will talk you through the process that she has gone through recently with GIDEON and how she did that in a user-centered design way.
Thank you, Vee. So yeah, let me start just by briefly showing you what I've been working on for the past year, and just to give some context. And this can be applied to library portals and other projects as well, not necessarily a digital product. So when I joined GIDEON in 2019, I discovered that it was well-established, very much loved product, but it still used this interface developed back in the 90s. And you can see that on the before side of the screen. Enduring as that design was, it needed a facelift because the interface was not responsive. It was tricky to use on mobile devices, and that's just not something that you can have for a very long time these days. So I was lucky enough to collaborate with hundreds of medical doctors, librarians, professors, students from 26 countries, and they came from institutions such as Stanford, Harvard, WHO, UGA. You'll be pleased to hear one very, very smart assistant professor from the UGA helped us as well. And we went through this classic user-centered design process 7 times. And that completely transformed the user journey. It completely changed the look of the application. But I think most importantly, it changed the way people felt about conducting the research. And I think that is the goal when providing any service online, to make things easy and enjoyable for people using it. So how does this look like in practice? Well, as Vee said, everything starts with getting to know your users. Before starting any development work, it is important to know what problem needs solving. More importantly, you need to ensure that you're solving the right problem before you spend a lot of money on solving something that you think might be a problem. I know some very clever person said, I forget the name, that you need to fall in love with the problem. And when working on a GIDEON upgrade, I had the perfect chance to do just that. Went back to the users again and again, taking on board a lot of feedback, which was not always easy to accept. If Vee could change the slide, I would like to share some pictures with you here. And you can see incremental changes to the design in these pictures. So what this is me going back to the drawing board and improving the design, or completely redoing the design after every round of feedback. Now, it is very easy to get attached to a certain look, especially if it's your baby, so to speak, and that happened to me. It was painful. So for me, it took at least 3 rounds of redesign to realize that it will never be perfect, because users' needs will change over time and the application will need to change with them. But anyway, we reached version 4 and we thought it looked good enough for us to start coding. But when we did start coding, we didn't stop asking for feedback. We actually opened up the database 3 times while it was still in development, completely buggy and not very far from perfect. But we allowed people to interact with it and tell us their thoughts. And when I saw the user delight increase after each round of testing, that was the most rewarding feeling ever. And I really hope you all get to experience that. It also gives me great joy to now look at the old and the new interface side by side and recognize how much the product has improved thanks to our community, because we opened it up. So while it may not always be fun to explore users' points of frustration, I think that feedback inevitably drives inspiration. Vee, I know that you have recently had a similar experience with My Athens portal.
Yeah, absolutely. So we followed the same user experience design framework that we touched on at the beginning. And my team and I has been working on improving the My Athens experience over the past 6 to 8 months. And our goal was to improve the way users access subscribed resources. We gave My Athens a much needed look and feel update. As you can see, it now works on mobile devices and supports the latest accessibility standards. The new My Athens is now live and available for all OpenAthens customers. Happy to answer any questions you may have about that. So going back to that 3-step framework, the first step was getting to know your users. And in any project, to define what the problem is really the key to solving that problem. So under the user-centered design framework, you understand what the problem is by gathering insight from your users. This takes us to question number 2. So if you go back to your Slido, you will see the second poll, and let me just switch presenter screen. There you go. So the question for you is, who are your users? And you can have more than one answers here. So choose as many as you think are relevant to you.
It's so cool to watch it update in real time.
Yeah, I love that. It's good UX. So we can see students are strongly in the lead, very closely followed by faculty. I really enjoy seeing faculty taking second place. With my experience in interviewing libraries all over the world, that is not a surprise result to see. Faculty has such, they're such a important stakeholder for the library, often have a strong services should be what library should offer. So that's not a surprise to me at all. Perhaps I'm surprised to see it that strongly represented at 78%. It is also I'm extremely happy to see that all of you know who your users are. There was an answer, I don't know, nobody selected that, and that is great. This is really critical to know who your users are. Once you know who your users are, you can go and interrogate their needs. That's the first milestone in your user insight gathering is identifying your users. You may identify user groups that are within larger groups. So for example, students, probably it's a too large of a collective term to describe all the individual preferences and user needs within that group. So within students, you may have flavors. So obviously, first year students will have different needs and requirements as far as the library goes versus, I don't know, a master degree, some student who has had a much longer experience in university and with the university system.
Vee, there's this interesting comment here in the chat. Wendy Moore said, often we find librarians and staff are some of our biggest users. And Adam said, great point.
Yeah.
That's not one of the options we provided here, is it?
Yeah. No, good point. That's an absolutely valid point. And I'm guessing that's where the other 11% may have captured. Hopefully, they have captured some of that insight. But yeah, it's an absolutely valid point. Sometimes colleagues in the libraries are also users of the libraries systems and services. Okay, was there anything else you wanted to add, Chris? Any observations while I'm switching between the two tabs?
I think this is very much what we expected. I knew that faculty is going to be pretty high at the top. Wendy Moore says again, she says, can make UX changes difficult internally because of devotion to current links, etc. I think that really leads to your next slide perfectly.
Yes, it's a great segue. It's one of those things that seems obvious, but it is worth pointing out that no matter how strong-minded your stakeholders are, or how many PhDs they may have, they are not your users, and their views cannot replace insight from that you can gather by simply talking to your patrons. And this is what we did with MyAthens. We interviewed students and medical professionals so we can better understand their needs and how MyAthens could help them to get valuable content as quickly as possible. We didn't just go and ask the librarians what their needs were, as librarians often like to represent their patrons, and to a degree they do that. We decided to gather insight directly from the users in order to provide the best possible solution to the problem that they were genuinely having. So here's some familiar faces on this slide. Russell Palmer, you can see, and Lucy Harrison from GALILEO are both helping Kristina and myself to set up an interview corner where we can talk to the library patrons of Athens Clarke Public Library. We carry swag, lots of it, you can see. I know this is the pre-pandemic world, where all we needed to do to talk to people was to show up at the location where the users were and offer some food, and that was the best way to get some feedback and get insight into the user's needs. And it is still the best way to approach users where that is possible. So for those of you who are back on campus, or for those public libraries that are operational, just speaking to your users while they are in the library is the really easy way to get insight in the context of them using the library. When on-site, however, is not an option, you will have to reach out to patrons in alternative ways. So here is what the OpenAthens team did when users were not on our doorstep. We wanted to better understand the needs of libraries in the global south. And since we wanted an unbiased view of resource authentication, we didn't want OpenAthens customers to take part in the research. So we used LinkedIn to reach out to librarians in Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, and India. We managed to get 5 interviews over Zoom, which really helped us understand the wider context shaping the librarians' needs. On the back of the interviews, we put together a survey to further quantify some of the insights we were getting. We did pay £200, or about $250, for a LinkedIn campaign to be able to reach a high number of librarians in the regions we were interested in. You don't have to pay for social media campaign if you already have large following. But it does help if you are able to offer a small incentive for participation. Freebies, online vouchers, any giveaway boosts research participation rates. Chris, I know you have similar approach to research participants recruitment.
Indeed. So whenever it is not possible to approach people where they might be using the product, I find that social media can actually be a good way. And when testing Gideon, we recruited 60% of our advisors via Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And while still on the subject of talking to users, I just want to bring up the danger of asking biased questions. And these are the sort of questions that seek to validate the opinion you already have instead of trying to find out what the other person actually thinks. And I guess it's the way to protect your feelings, but it doesn't help to create the best possible user experience. Vee, have you run into situations like that?
Yeah, all the time. It's not unusual, and we don't think about the bias. We may always think about the bias we may introduce in the questioning of our users. But it's important to consider whether you are really looking for an insight into their needs, or you're looking to validate an idea that you already have in your mind. And there's a fine line there. And if you're looking to validate ideas, you are running a risk of asking those biased questions and leading the witness in a way that may lead you to wrong conclusions.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can tell you that there was actually a time when I would have chosen the road of defensiveness and not the road of inspiration. One book that really helped me ask better questions and become a little more open to actually receiving the answers was The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. It illustrates the case of biased questions quite beautifully, using a mom and a son example, where mom cooks in the kitchen, son approaches her with his product idea. But here's what I took from it. So in a hypothetical scenario, if I was testing a new library portal and my patron couldn't figure out how to do something, I might educate them on the spot and say, now that you know what to click, it's easy to use, right? And the patron would say yes, and I would write down in my results pad that the portal is easy to use, but users need education. So you probably noticed that my question was all wrong, and it forced the user into saying what I wanted to hear. And it actually happens all the time in user research. But had I asked a better question, I could have avoided launching the whole user education program, and I could have simply changed the size or the color of one particular button. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Vee.
Thanks, Chris. So in summary, here are our favorite tools to help you with your research. We recommend using social media to recruit research participants. Often large institutions in education in particular have developed social media channels. Use them. They can be very, very valuable. Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or any other video calling platform is there to help you with interviews and usability tests if you're doing them remotely. If you need to quantify some of the insight you are getting, there are lots of free, well-established survey platforms I'm sure most of you are familiar with. I have been using Microsoft Forms, which together with Teams comes out of the box with Office 365 for those of you who use Microsoft. Over to you, Chris, for the step 2 of the user experience design methodology, which is experiment and learn.
I love this step. This is my favorite. I think this is really what being user-centric is all about. You know, it's about being open and humble and allowing yourself to go on a journey and create something that will really make a difference to people using your site. And that comes through experimentation. So the first tool I would like to introduce you to is Figma, which is absolutely excellent free tool that I used throughout the entire Gideon redesign process, and I still use it a lot. It is very easy to learn. What it allows you to do is essentially save money, not only because it is free and a great alternative to Adobe Suite, but here's an example scenario. So you might be considering a new layout for a library website. But do you actually know it will meet the needs of your patrons? Do you know it will actually work? And if we calculate the risks, you could find a great developer who has done this before. You pay them, they go away, do the job, you launch the website, and then all of a sudden phones are ringing off the hook and you start getting a bunch of support tickets. And I'm sure we can agree that this would be an undesirable outcome. So the best thing to do to avoid the post-launch chaos is to create a couple of prototypes and show them to people that will be using your site before you even start the development. So this way you can ensure that the end result delights your library patrons and your usage continues to go up instead of your support ticket queue going up. And once you have successfully launched your site, there's another tool that you can use, which is called Google Optimize. And it is the next logical step in this continuous improvement cycle. It is an excellent tool to run live experiments and optimize your website. So for example, I might want to test which login button text works the best. Is it sign in, log in, or access? And it might seem like a very trivial thing, but in my experience, a simple change like that in just the wording of a button can actually increase usage by up to 5%. So setting up an experiment in Google Optimize only takes a couple of clicks. And the tool then allows me to edit the page that I want to test without any coding whatsoever. In this example, I have created 3 variants and allocated 33% of traffic to each. And at the end of my specified testing time, Google Optimize will calculate the winner, and then I can go ahead, make permanent changes to my login page, which is a data-driven approach that everybody loves these days, and hope for that 5% usage increase.
Super, what a great example of optimizing live experiences. At this point, I want to introduce you to Miro, for those of you who haven't used it yet. Miro is probably my top post-pandemic collaboration tool. Anything that previously required a meeting room, a whiteboard, sticky notes, now we do in Miro. The examples here are from a design critique session for OpenAthens and MyAthens in particular, a workshop on crafting key messages for customer communication plan, and an assumption mapping session where the team identified key areas for future research. In the freemium version of Miro, you can create up to 3 boards, but even that gives you plenty of space to work on. So here is the summary slide of the tried and tested tools we use during the experimentation phase. Figma is for mockups and prototypes. The free version is very generous and can really help you communicate your ideas with users and stakeholders alike. Google Optimize is a great way to run A/B tests on live services. It can really help you increase user engagement. Miro is a collaboration platform, and it can be used for gathering and sharing ideas, feedback, and insight from research. This last section is about the tools we use on live services to track success and monitor engagement. And top of the list is Hotjar. Hotjar is a behavioral tracking tool that plots heat maps showing what users click on. You can see a heat map on the left side of the screen, that kind of darkened image with red dot at the top. That is the heat map we created for the legacy version of MyAthens. I also use Hotjar to solicit feedback and poll users on things like Net Promoter Score. The heat map I've just pointed out clearly illustrates where the most clicked area of the product is, and that is a button that links to all resources at the top of the screen. In the new version of MyAthens, we made the resources the focal point of the product and organized everything else around it. Chris, I know you're using Hotjar for video recording as well.
Indeed, it is a multifaceted tool. Hotjar video recordings, for me, have been invaluable and very inspiring. And they're a huge time saver because video recording does not require you to talk to anyone, sit down with anyone, especially now that you can't actually sit down with anyone. And you can see exactly how your patrons interact with the site and where they struggle. And this raw data is so powerful because it does not pass through a politeness filter, and you get to see the user journey through your user's eyes. All recordings are completely anonymous, which is great for privacy compliance, but it is also great for research because it allows you to focus on patterns and issues as opposed to being tempted to judge your particular users. So yeah, video recordings have been absolutely amazing. But combined with that, I also like to use a quantitative approach. So Hotjar is great for qualitative analysis, but Google Analytics is it really excels at crunching the numbers, as you can imagine. Again, all data here is completely anonymous, and it can help answer very important questions, such as on what days does my library portal get most users, or what are the most popular pages or queries? It can also help you analyze your user journey and measure the success of any changes that you made to the website. Another good question to ask: what devices are my users accessing the site with? Is my site optimized to support those devices? And if you find that it doesn't work very well on an iPhone or perhaps on a new type of browser like Brave, you could improve just based on that data there. And that's just scratching the surface. Google Analytics really generates a gold mine of data to dig through. Again, this tool is completely free, so if you're not using it already, I highly, highly recommend it.
Good shout, Google Analytics, Chris. This one I'm very excited about. I came across recently. It is called Useful, and it allows you to create a step-by-step guided tours for first-time users on your web platforms. So, for example, the library platform can support a guided tour for first-time users or the first-year students enrolling. They can be taken through that step-by-step guide to introduce them to the library, and all of that happens online on the platform. It doesn't require any development, and you can change the guides as often as you need without causing any disruption to the live service. Alongside the guides, there are all sorts of other useful features like tooltips, tooltip help, feedback forms, and surveys. I really believe this could be an excellent way to help library patrons navigate the complex library platforms.
Love it, absolutely love it. I'm very tempted to try it myself, actually. So we touched on an excellent point there. In the past, users would have been patient enough to perhaps pick up the phone and call up a support desk, and many of them still are, but they tend to have less and less time these days. Students are often doing their work on the go, on the bus, on the way to work. Clinicians, my audience is clinicians, they're very busy. They need to look things up as they run down the hospital corridor. Professors also multitasking, trying to meet so many deadlines. So this assigning ticket for a problem and coming back to the support desk several days later, checking in on it, it tends not to work that well anymore. And reading a manual or a wiki article to learn how to use an online tool, it tends to be no longer a trend or a thing. So the expectation now is to receive help at the point of need. And when looking for that contextual help for Gideon, I was exploring various glamorous and expensive tools with AI chatbox functionalities of varying proficiency, but none of them seemed to be simple enough to be managed by one person. And I was looking for something that could integrate our video and text knowledge base into the product itself and allow users ask questions at the point of need. And that's when I came across Groove HQ, which happens to be one of the cheapest and most user-friendly solutions on the market at the moment. And I was able to spin it up in less than 10 minutes, which is amazing. So what I really like about it is how it tracks popular search queries and user engagement with the knowledge base itself. It tells me which videos or articles are the most helpful, which ones are less accessed. It informs you what new articles should be created next. So for example, if I find that there are some search queries that did not match any documents for a particular period of time, I could address this problem by creating a page dedicated to that question. And this is the last tool that we wanted to share with you today. Now, here's the set of tools to improve your patron experience on the budget when talking about experimentation and continuous improvement. So Hotjar for heat maps, collecting feedback, surveys, video recordings, behavior analytics, in other words. Google Analytics, great for quantitative insights of your users' behavior and also measuring the impact of what good job you're doing in the library. Use It Full is excellent for step-by-step guides, and Groove HQ for contextual on-demand help. And in fact, I think Use It Full and Groove HQ could really be combined together and be like partner products. So I might try that out myself. Let's go to the last question for you today. I know we're sort of running out of time and we would like to leave some time for questions at the end. But if you would permit us to ask one more question, please go to Slido again. And we're going to play one last game with you.
There it is. What is your favorite experience design tool? We shared ours. We are keen to know what is your favorite one, whether you've used some of the tools we've mentioned, and it will be interesting to know what you guys have already used. Google Forms right away, yeah, absolutely. It's as good as Microsoft Forms, if not better. They seem to Google and Microsoft cover each other's features very well. Canva, yeah, very good one. I've come across it in the past. It's a prototyping tool on top of my head.
I use it for marketing, actually. It's a great free tool. You can create all sorts of graphics, posters, infographics with
there
it.
You go.
Really, really nice tool.
Yeah, but see, you can create, if you're already using Canva, why don't you try prototyping or mocking up changes, proposed changes to your library platform using Canva? If you use it for one thing, it may be useful for something else.
Oh, I think
Google
this is
Slides.
I think this is the Canva user who left this comment. Jamie says, I use it for storyboarding videos and wireframes. There you go.
Super. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely. Google Analytics is strong there. It's good to hear that it's well used. It's such a powerful platform. Adobe XD makes it up. Yes, I like Adobe. I have to say though, since I've moved to Figma, I have never looked back to XD. It's really good, don't get me wrong. For those of you who use Adobe XD, it's a fantastic prototyping tool. But my personal preference is to Figma.
Pen and paper, good one.
Pen and paper, yeah, all-time favorite.
Always works.
Always works. A good quick sketch to communicate your ideas. It doesn't need to be, you don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be able to draw straight lines and circles, perfect circles. The point of prototyping is communicating what you have in your head. Put it down on a piece of paper so you can start conversation with your stakeholders and with your users, whether that actually solves their problems or not. On that note, I will stop sharing, and if there are any questions, we are more than happy to answer them all. Chris, do you want to give me a hand with the questions?
Oh, here we go.
One question. Go ahead, Mike.
Any suggestions for engaging with K-12 online users?
K-12 for children in kids in school, right? Yep. Yeah. It's a difficult one because there's ethical considerations when it comes to children. I would not recommend unsolicited and unsupervised conversations with minors. I would suggest that that is done in the presence of parents and certainly with the consent of parents. So this kind of prompt to, oh, hi, how are you doing today? What do you need? What's your problem? It's a bit more difficult to do with minors. You definitely need to approach them via the parents, get the consent of the parents, and discuss and agree a best way to have a conversation with the minor in a way that the child feels safe and comfortable to share information with you.
Thanks.
Someone suggested sandwiches. Yes, that I'm sure that helps. We just have to do it in a COVID-safe way with the sandwiches, individually packed, I guess, with a splash of hand sanitizer on the side.
Here's another question. Are there tools that you think are too cumbersome?
What do you think, Chris?
Too cumbersome. Well, out of all the tools that we spoke about today, the one that was hardest to learn for me personally was actually Google Analytics, and that wasn't that hard. But that was the one that took me the longest to wrap my head around exactly how they're reporting what, how you add parameters and things. Naturally, if you have great developers to help you, you can get over that learning curve so fast. Watch a couple of YouTube videos and everything's set up and done. But yeah, in terms of too cumbersome tools, I don't know, Adobe Suite. I worked with Adobe Suite for a while, and I have to say that does require specialist knowledge. You need to spend your time and literally learn the tool. So that could be considered something that is not very straightforward, not very basic.
Yeah, I completely agree. Adobe, the whole creative suite, someone mentioned in the favorite tools question that they use Illustrator, for example. I use Illustrator and I love it, but it does take a bit of learning. It works in a particular way that all the Adobe products work. So if you don't want to kind of jump in a deep end, if you don't have time, if you want to put something quickly on the go, there are alternatives. So Figma can support you in any prototyping or mock-ups. Cover, like some of you suggested, is a good tool as well. So when you come across a need to edit an image, don't go to a default thinking I need Photoshop, because you don't these days. There's millions of ways you can do it. It's just cheaper and faster.
Another question just popped in. What about video programs, platforms, easy for editing for librarians?
Well, have you tried PowerPoint?
How
PowerPoint
about
has a
YouTube?
video editor. Honestly, I tried it the other month, and I was so surprised that I could record myself and do it slide by slide. It is majestic, and most librarians know how to use PowerPoint really, really well. So do check out PowerPoint video features. I was amazed to find out that they have actually introduced that.
Yeah, it's a really good shout. So recording, and it depends what you would like to record. Obviously, we record a lot of demos, or we record the usability sessions if we want to come back to them for reference. Whatever the video conferencing platform we use is, so say Zoom, we would just use that as a recording and then edit it. Again, videos, even if you choose to share them, it don't have to be perfect these days. They need to be of a decent quality, and what's important for a good video is actually a good sound and engaging presentation, not so much the quality of what is on screen.
Are there any other questions? You can also raise your hand if you'd rather use your mic, and I'll unmute you.
All right, I'm not.
Jamie says we use Camtasia. It's not easy at the beginning, but once you get familiar with it, it works well. And then Russell says Galileo support uses a variety of different video tools from Capture, formerly Gene, Snagit, and Camtasia.
Amazing, great.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's been fantastic to spend an hour with everybody from Galileo. We would much rather be in Georgia, but we are not. I hope next time around it would be easier to meet face to face.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And what about if they have questions following the conference? Is there in your PowerPoint, are your contact information available?
Yes, so it is included in the slides, but here's my email in the chat as well. If you ever wanted to talk or just chat user experience, I'm always open to that.
Okay,
you can find me on LinkedIn, always open to connect. Happy to answer any questions and share insight from my experience with librarians all over the world.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you to Vee, and thank you to Kristina for joining us for this conference. The slides, or for this session, the slides will be available immediately following for you all to download if you'd like to use them, and then the recording will be available later. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.